The first parts of this series focus on decades of American provocations that caused the war in Ukraine, which was a plan to weaken Russia. Losing this proxy war was not considered, and no strategy exists to prevent a Russian victory. Recent interviews appeared in American corporate news that exposed even more provocations.
Tonight on Prime, the remarkable story of how the CIA and Ukrainian intelligence forged a deep secret partnership that began a decade ago and has been crucial in helping Ukraine defend itself against Russia's invasion. It has also given the U.S. extraordinary insight into Russia. ABC's Patrick Reevell spoke with former U.S. and Ukrainian officials who told him how the CIA and Ukraine became allies in a shadow war.
The CIA began providing millions of dollars in funding, training and equipment alongside Britain's MI6 intelligence service. The CIA also eventually helping build a dozen forward operating bases for HUR along the border with Russia. The CIA and Ukraine also launched a program dubbed Operation Goldfish, training Ukrainians to pose as Russians in third countries around the world. Vladimir Putin has long argued the CIA was controlling Ukraine. Some have criticized the partnership as provoking Putin.
This confirms massive CIA funding of Ukrainian special forces starting a decade ago to allow armed attacks inside Russia from a dozen newly established CIA bases along the Russian border. Just before he left office, President Joe Biden revealed that the United States had placed nuclear-armed missiles in Ukraine.
And when this war started, there was a tremendous tension about the possibility of nuclear confrontation, the possibility of Vladimir Putin using nuclear weapons. Did you have any direct communication with Vladimir Putin to deter him from using nuclear weapons?
Well, I did. When he started talking about tactical, I thought, this guy wants to use tactical nuclear weapons. No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Nuclear weapons, tactical nuclear weapons in Europe scares the hell out of everybody, including the Russians. Mm-hmm. Including the Russians. And so what I made it clear to him, look, he said to me that what he wanted to make sure that there were no nuclear weapons in in Ukraine, mm-hmm. that they weren't a member of NATO, and that they would not be, and he started off one of the conversations by saying, I know you can take me out tomorrow. I know you can take me out tomorrow from Ukraine. You can strike Moscow. You can strike. I said, well, that's not a problem. We've already taken the nuclear weapons out. So took them all out. There's none there. We're not going to put any back in. And they're not.
The experienced MSNBC news propagandist interviewing Biden knew not to ask more about this shocking top-secret revelation, which was probably the result of Biden's cognitive decline. Part 9 of this series explains the long-term plan by the United States government to prepare for a surprise nuclear attack on Russia using missile launchers in Eastern Europe. A large missile base was built in Romania and another in Poland as the United States pulled out of the INF treaty that banned such missile launchers. The U.S. military also sent new mobile missile launchers to Germany, and Biden blurted out that some had been secretly placed in Ukraine. Western media always claims the war in Ukraine was caused by an unprovoked Russian invasion. Early parts of this series show that Russian intervention was provoked in several ways, like Ukraine's flagrant violation of the 1991 Belovezha Accords. This was signed by former Soviet states that guaranteed minority rights for all its citizens, to include the right to use their native language. Russia never wanted to rule Ukraine, which is why it allowed it to become independent in 1991 after it signed the Belovezha Accords. In Article 3, it states, quote, "The parties, desirous of facilitating the expression, preservation, and development of the distinctive ethnic, cultural, linguistic, and religious characteristics of the national minorities resident in their territories and of the unique ethno-cultural regions that have come into being, will extend protection to them." End quote. After the 2014 American CIA coup in Ukraine, a new regime was installed that demanded a pure Ukrainian nation, so openly violated this treaty by persecuting millions of ethnic Russians and banning use of their language. All that Russian President Vladimir Putin desired was the withdrawal of the Ukrainian army from the two Russian-majority Donbass republics and allow them autonomy. The people of Ukraine endorsed this idea with the overwhelming election of ethnic Russian Volodymyr Zelensky in 2019, who promised to make this happen. But the CIA blocked this peaceful resolution. During a 2021 peace summit in Switzerland, warmongering American President Joe Biden ignored Putin's concerns about increased American provocations. Biden bragged that he told Putin, quote, "You have no soul." Putin explained that Ukraine was a sister nation of Russia, and its capital of Kyiv is the birthplace of Russia. Biden somehow decided this fact meant Russia planned to recreate the Warsaw Pact by invading all of Eastern Europe.
When I sat down with him in I guess it was in Switzerland, before we took office, but after we had won, and was trying to work out something on nuclear power to see if we wouldn't go to space with nuclear. And we got into this debate about what was Europe going to look like. And it was clear to me, if you read his speech, go back and get the speech he made early on, he talks about Kyiv as the birthplace of Mother Russia. That is, all he wants to do is reestablish the old Warsaw Pact. He wants to establish that control over it. Can't let that happen. This guy is not a good guy. Anyway.
A key goal of Russian armed intervention in Ukraine is denazification. As this series documented, the American CIA utilized dormant Ukrainian Nazi groups from World War II to instigate a coup to overthrow its democratically elected president, who had refused to seek NATO membership. The reappearance of these Nazi groups allowed Russia to invoke the United Nations Charter and intervene in Ukraine. The German invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941 allowed 50,000 Ukrainian nationalists to join the Axis forces. German leader Heinrich Himmler is seen here inspecting Ukrainian troops serving in Ukrainian units alongside the German army. As a result, the United Nations Charter authorizes Russia to take enforcement actions against Ukraine's CIA-installed Nazi-backed regime. The enemy state clauses is a term used to refer to Article 107 and parts of Article 53 of the United Nations Charter, which are exceptions to the general prohibition on the use of force in relation to countries that were part of the Axis. Under Article 107, the original United Nations members from World War II are allowed to take enforcement action against any state that had been an enemy during World War II, while Article 53 states that the renewal of aggressive action against a former enemy state does not require UN Security Council approval. One may debate if Ukraine was part of the Axis during World War II, but not in Canada, where in 2023, its Prime Minister and Parliament honored thousands of Ukrainian members of the Nazi SS Galicia Division, including 98-year-old Yaroslav Hunka.
We have here in the chamber today Ukrainian-Canadian world veteran from the Second World War who fought the Ukrainian independence against the Russians and continues to support the troops today, even at his age of 98.
Nazi Germany formed an allied Ukrainian government in March 1945. This was called the Ukrainian National Committee that controlled a large Ukrainian national army with 50,000 soldiers. Soon after the war ended, the American CIA made contact with remnants of this anti-Soviet army that persisted as secret Nazi gangs throughout Ukraine. They provided intelligence, while the CIA provided them arms and encouraged attacks on the Soviets. The CIA utilized these Nazi gangs to conduct a coup in Kyiv in 2014, and they remain powerful in Ukraine today as recognized political parties. Russia can argue that the UN Charter allows a, quote, renewal of aggressive action against a former enemy state, unquote, to eliminate this resurgent Nazi threat and denazify Ukraine. Joe Biden left office as his proxy war in Ukraine failed, and he spewed nonsense that provides an excellent example of dismal leadership and an aging, arrogant, and delusional empire.
I can report to the American people, our adversaries are weaker than were when we came into this job 4 years ago. Just consider Russia. When Putin invaded Ukraine, he thought he'd conquer Kyiv in a matter of days. But the truth is, since that war began, I'm the only one that stood in the center of Kyiv, not him.